Day 10 of self-quarantine. I live in an apartment in New York City. New York City has been hit harder than any other state in the US. I live alone and was watching TV at 2 a.m. last night. I noticed a strange sound at my door. It was a scratching sound followed by a meow-like cat sound. What the fuck is going on? I get up off the couch and crept slowly and silently to my door. The scratching sound continued. I looked out my peephole and didn't see anything. I was more than concerned at this point. I walked back to my kitchen area to get some water before I went to sleep. My apartment is a very small studio-style apartment. I essentially live in one large room with all of my amenities close at hand. When my head finally hit my pillow, a knock at the door came once more. I about jumped out of my skin. I approached my door with my handgun and peeped out the hole once more. I saw a man on all fours licking his hand like a cat. I yelled through the door that I was armed. That would-be intruder stood up slowly, placed his large knife directly against my door's peephole. I figured I would catch him off guard, and I had only milliseconds to react. I drew my gun and pulled the door open in a flash. He took a step back. We locked eyes in that moment, and he meowed at me and winked. He slowly walked down the long hallway and vanished. I am still to this day asking what the fuck that was. I walked the length of the hallway to make sure he had exited the building. Never saw him again. I walked back to my apartment door and somehow ended up locked out. My door never locks when it closes. Maybe in the madness I accidentally locked it. I'm without a key to my apartment, and I just heard heavy footsteps coming up from both staircases on my floor. I'm outside in the hall with my gun and boxers. Should be an interesting night.
There was a Japanese man who had grown tired of his wife. When they had gotten married, she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen, with long black hair, beautiful brown eyes, and soft skin. However, over the years her looks had faded and she had grown fat. Her face had become wrinkled. He realized that he wasn't attracted to her anymore, and he decided to leave her. The man told his wife he wanted a divorce and promptly moved out of the house. He rented an apartment in the city and took to visiting bars and clubs in search of a new romance. It wasn't long until he met a stunningly beautiful young girl. She was only 18 years old, tall and slim, with long flowing blonde hair. He was instantly smitten, and within weeks, he had asked her to marry him. The blonde girl accepted, and after they got married, she moved in with him. However, as soon as the ring was on her finger, the blonde girl's behavior changed. Before the wedding, she'd been sweet, pleasant, polite, but now her attitude was hard, mean, and rude. She was vain and seemed to spend hours in front of the mirror, preening and applying makeup and gazing at her own reflection. She was also very demanding. She made him spend all of his money on her. She forced him into buying her new clothes, new jewelry, new gadgets, and even a new car. One day the man came home and took a good look at his new wife. All of the makeup, the eyeliner, the mascara, the eyeshadow, all of it only hid the ugliness inside. He began to wish that he had never married her. As the years went on, the man started longing for his old wife. She may have been old and overweight, but she'd been a caring and considerate person. He cried when he remembered her soft voice, her gentle smile, and her eternal patience. He regretted the day he had divorced her. He gradually realized that he still loved his first wife, loved her more than he could ever love the blonde girl. He began to understand how he had thrown away the only woman who ever truly loved him. Sometimes in his dreams he would see his old wife sitting alone in her room, her long black hair covering her face, and late at night he would ask himself how she was living. What was she doing? Would she ever take him back? One night, after a bitter argument, he decided that he couldn't endure any more of his new wife. He couldn't. He decided to leave her. He left the city and made the long journey back to his old wife's house. When he reached the street where they used to live, it was already late at night. The house looked deserted. Tall weeds were growing in the garden, and the windows were cracked and broken. The Tiles were missing from the roof and the walls looked as if they hadn't been painted in years. He knocked on the front door, but no one answered. Then, he tried the handle and found that the door was not locked. He walked inside and found the rooms empty and silent. A chilly wind was blowing through the broken windows. Going upstairs, he opened the door to the bedroom, and he was startled to find his wife sitting there on the bed. He ran to her, embraced her in his arms, and cried on her shoulder. Through the tears, he told her how much he had missed her over the years and begged her to forgive him for leaving her. Her face was covered by her long black hair, but he heard her sweet voice whispering in his ear. She told him, "I'm glad you came back to me, if only for a moment." "Only for a moment," he replied with a laugh. "Girl, I'm back for good. Now we can spend the rest of our lives together." He brushed the hair from her face and leaned in to kiss her, but when he opened his eyes, he screamed in terror. Her face was a dirty, moldering skull. To his horror, he realized that he had been clutching in his arms nothing but a sack of dusty old bones and long, stringy black hair. The man scrambled to his feet and tossed the bones away from him in disgust. He stood there in the dim light, shuddering as a sickening feeling spread throughout his body. He ran downstairs and out the front door, and on the street, he found a neighbor and demanded to know who lived in the old, broken down and abandoned house. "There's no one living in that house now," said the neighbor. "Years ago, it belonged to a woman whose husband left her. He divorced her in order to marry another woman. She was so distraught that she killed herself soon afterward."
This encounter happened to me just recently, about a month ago, before the global pandemic. I'm a 20-year-old female, and I was working the night shift at my local Papa John's with my two co-workers, Vicky and Carl, and we were getting ready to close up shop for the night. I was pretty bummed having to work the night shift, but it was only one night, and my manager agreed to pay me overtime and an extra day off. Anyway, I told Vicky to clean off the tables and that I would clean the windows, as these were our main duties for closing. I'm cleaning the windows when I notice a man in his mid-40s out in the parking lot ranting on about something on the phone. He was wearing a shirt that used to be white but was now clearly yellow and brown, along with a Yankees baseball cap. The Papa John's was located in a not-so-great area of town, so we were used to seeing people like this every now and then. I paid no attention to him and continued cleaning the windows when I suddenly see him approaching the front door. We had already locked all of our doors and were 20 minutes away from closing, so I politely told him that we were closed and that he'd have to come back tomorrow. "Can I just come in to use the restroom? I'll be real quick." As much as I wanted to let him in, I told him no once again and that there was a 24-hour gas station just down the road and that he could try there. He then stared at me with an empty, pale look on his face, which then began to form into a frown. In my opinion, it was the type of look a toddler gives their parent when they can't have a toy. And coming from someone this age, it's much more disturbing. He then slowly walked away, disappearing into the night. After a while, I didn't see the man anywhere, so I figured he must have left, which I found relieving, as I don't like dealing with customers like that. 10 minutes go by, and I remembered that I had to take the trash out and replace the bags. I grabbed the two heavy garbage bags and started heading out, but Steve, our delivery guy, had just gotten back from his last delivery and offered to take the trash out for me. I gladly accepted, and he did just that. But when he came back in, he looked so petrified and stiff as a board. His face was pale and his eyes were wild. Being the good friend I was to Steve, I asked what was wrong, and he told me to come behind the counter. What he told me sent shivers up my spine. That guy who wanted to come in earlier was crouched down by the dumpster waiting for you with a roll of duct tape. I told Steve to call the police while I informed my manager about the situation. He told us to close all doors and call the cops immediately. The nearest police station was about 5 minutes away, so they came within a couple of minutes. However, just like in most situations like this, the man wasn't there. He must have been waiting for me this whole time to take out the trash so that he could do God knows what to me. The next day, my manager swore to me that I would never work another night shift again. I still work there till this day, and nothing has happened since, and Steve always drives me home from work after our shifts. I am forever grateful that Steve was there that night, but I still wonder what would have happened to me had I had been the one who took the trash out that night.